Hi everyone, and good afternoon, good evening. Thank you everyone for joining the today's session on closing in on OpenAI. We have Entry, who is a DBA developer and a Microsoft certified trainer, who is going to walk us through a fun, entertaining OpenAI session. It's going to be a lot of fun and interactive session, and I hope you guys will be enjoying it. Before we get into the session, there is two things that I want to share. That the session is going to be recorded. You do not need to do it on your side, and we will share it in our YouTube channel. And secondly, there is certificate of participation to those who stay till the end. So we will share a form. Basically, fill out the form, and you will get the first participation certificate. That's all on my end, and our stage is to entry.
Okay, thank you very much, my friend. It's really nice to be here. For you who joined a bit before, you got to see my cat. She's around here somewhere. She is just woken up and uh, she's looking for food at this moment. So let's get started. Okay. So today we'll talk about OpenAI. Everyone is talking about OpenAI, of course. And in this case, we'll talk how we can do OpenAI with Azure technologies. Okay, so we can do not just the OpenAI things that you've seen everywhere, but if you use Azure, you can actually do a lot more and pay the same or less and have much more things. So we'll try to see how this is done. And of course, as always, if you have any questions, just ask. Okay, we have chat here, so we're always happy to answer any questions at any time. From time to time, I will look into the chat and the Q&A, and I will try to answer them as best as possible. Okay, so let's get started. And yes, of course, you've seen my cat. She will come back eventually because when she runs out of food, she will come to me, as always. And this is me. My name is André Melancia. I usually do a lot of crazy sessions like this because, come on, boring sessions are not fun. And a few months ago, I actually did some sessions on hacking Azure AI. I think it was September for you guys, if I'm not mistaken. So this was also quite fun. That session focused specifically on trying to exploit vulnerabilities from AI systems, etc. This one is more about how to implement OpenAI for you to be able to do things that you want to do. And one request, please don't do a Skynet. Okay, we had enough of that during the pandemic and all of that. We don't need anything to take over the world anymore. So please just do something simple. Don't hook up the machines to anything that will enslave us all. Okay. So anyway, this session is all about closing in on OpenAI. So of course, we will talk about OpenAI, but mostly focus on how to deploy it and how to use it using Azure. So the easiest way to do it. So if you use OpenAI directly with the OpenAI company, that's a bit more work, and you don't have all of the things because some of the things become deprecated. If you use Azure, even the deprecated ones, you can still use them for 6 months, maybe a year, depends on the case. But you will have them available for a bit longer, so it is a bit more stable for you to develop applications using Azure. It's the exact same algorithms, it's the exact same models that got generated from the algorithm. So it's technically both of them are in the same Azure infrastructure. The difference is you don't have to interact with OpenAI, just with Microsoft's. Okay, so we'll see how this is done. Okay, and let's have some fun. So yes, if you have questions, please ask them in the Q&A or in the chat. Always happy to answer any questions. And we'll see. Hopefully this is interesting. Okay. So first of all, I have the slide. I've used this slide a few times, possibly in the last session. Actually, possibly not. I'm not sure. This one I think is not. Um, so let me just. Oh, welcome back for this. 1 second. So let me mention that before we start, you don't need to have any knowledge of machine learning. This is not something that's required. If you are a developer, this is more than enough as long as you can do, let's say, Python programming, C sharp programming, or any other language. There's a lot of other languages that you can use. And if none of these languages that we'll talk about are okay with you, you can always use REST APIs. So if you are a COBOL programmer, which is still a thing these days, even though it started before I was born, if you are a COBOL programmer, you can still use OpenAI by calling REST APIs. And maybe, just maybe, someone created some kind of SDK or library to actually use it without calling the REST APIs directly. People are crazy enough to do that, so it is perfectly possible. I just don't know. But let's talk about machine learning first, because all of these models, all of these GPT models that we hear about, they were actually generated using machine learning. But what is this exactly? So, first of all, artificial intelligence, what is it? Well, it's a big area of study that includes a lot of things, including, talking bots that drive cars and all of the crazy things you can expect from films. But inside of the AI area of study, you actually have a small part which is called machine learning. And that machine learning, unlike artificial intelligence, which has a lot of variables and kind of depends on the environment. If you're driving a car, a lot of factors come into play. So it's not an easy thing. You have to keep looking at sensors, etc., to adjust how you drive. If there's a pedestrian in front of you, etc., a lot of variables. With machine learning, it's usually easier because when you have to learn something, if machines have to learn something, they usually start with a block of data. Let's say it's a table. It could be an image, it can be other formats of data, audio as well, video as well. But let's keep it simple and let's assume it's just a table of data, the same one that you use just like the ones in a database. Okay, so when you have a table like that, you usually have a few algorithms that you can use. A few examples of this is regression. So let's say you have a table, a lot of different fields that have information. Let's say about let's say prices of cars or the money you make per month or per year. So all of the information can be about you or about the car. So the details about the car, like the brand, the year, how many kilometers it has, etc. So all of the information is about the car, and then in the end, you can add just a column that says current price. If you are talking about humans, for instance, you can say all of the information like where you went to school, if you have kids, what's your age, or in this case, what's your birth date, could be a thing as well. All of that information, and then in the end, how much you make per month or per year. If you use algorithms like regression, these algorithms will try to detect. So these are continuous numbers. They will try to find the number that you mentioned. So these are numbers that are sequential. So let's say things like temperature, other things like the price is going up and down of some item, for instance. Don't use it for the stock market. You're going to lose money. That's the only thing I'm going to say. But in any case, you can predict the value using machine learning. So most of the columns that I mentioned are your inputs, and one of the columns is going to be your outputs. So usually they are called X, X1, X2, X3, and Y. In this case, you can name them whatever you want, but these naming conventions also exist. You can use them if you want to, or just give them proper names. In this case, regression would calculate that number, that continuous number. So that number will fall into some kind of line. Okay. Now I have a whole session, and you might see some videos from me online talking about actually these kind of things in more detail. Today I'll keep it very quick because we are going to focus on GPT models and things like that. Now we also have classification. Classification is something different. So you have values of A and B, so true or false. Can this person get a bank loan? Yes or no? Is this okay? Will this person pay the bank loan? Yes or no? So this would be a two-class classification, because you say yes or no, or A or B, two options, okay? But you also have multi-class classification. So multiple classes A, B, C, D, and that is called multi-class. So multiple options, multiple classes that you can choose from. Now, that classification is actually something that you use a lot. Very simple to implement. Use it the same way. So a whole bunch of fields, and then the last field will be A, B, C, or D. And when I mean A, B, C, or D, it can be any value you want, but typically falls into two values, three values, etc. Depends on what you're looking for. Okay. Now, you also have a few others, and some of these are things like clustering and association. And we've seen that we had a very commercial festive season just ending yesterday, kind of, well, probably continues until next week. But people buy things. It's very capitalistic kind of logic. People buy a lot of things. And, all the supermarkets want to predict what you are expecting to buy, because they want to stock up on the items that you are expected to buy. They don't want to, stock up on a lot of items that are not going to be sold. But they, let's say, if you buy swimming shorts at this time of the year, if you are in the northern hemisphere, clearly you're not gonna use them because it's really cold outside. 6 months from now, if you buy a winter coat, that doesn't make any sense. The opposite, of course, in the southern hemisphere. So they have to predict what kind of things you are expected to buy. Some of these are obvious. Any human can understand what I just said, but some others are not as obvious. So you use things like clustering and association to figure out what kind of things you need to buy. An example of this is, let's say that there are people that buy toilet paper, and we know that during the pandemic, everyone bought toilet paper. Uh, and sometimes they bought toilet paper, and you see a pattern that a lot of people buy toilet paper with wine or with beer. And that feels a bit strange, right? And you think, oh, there was a pattern here. A lot of people use it. And then you discover that it's a fake pattern. Okay. So indeed, there is a pattern. People buy it together. It is normal. But the reason they usually buy it together is that once a month they get paid, and they go to the supermarket and buy a whole month of shopping, or at least a very substantial part of shopping. And then through the rest of the month, they will just buy smaller things like foods and things like that. But these kind of things, they buy it together. So these kind of associations that you have between products, these can be things that are real, and sometimes they make sense. So if you buy diapers and wine, that actually goes together because one requires the other and vice versa. But if you buy toilet paper, it's usually a coincidence if you buy it along with wine, etc., or not. The pandemic has shown you that a lot of things actually makes much more sense than you might expect. Okay. Now, there are many others, but the next ones that I want to talk about is the ones why we're here. So large language models. And in one case, you have GPT models. So GPT is, let's see if I get this right, generative pre-trained transformers, which is a completely crazy name. Feels like it comes out of some kind of sci-fi film or something like that. But what they actually do is that internally they use a lot of different algorithms that analyze things pretty much in some cases like a brain does. So things like neural networks, deep learning, large language models, all of these last three actually are not that much different in terms of techniques. Okay, so these are slightly complicated for a human to go there and try to understand. Let's say if you are a developer and you want to understand regression like linear regression, it's very simple because it's only a few variables, and you can calculate this yourself. So you can predict what the result is going to be. However, if you use it with other things like neural networks, deep learning, etc., it's impossible to predict. It's just too complicated. Okay. Now, just let's assume that you don't have to know anything what's inside of it, at least not most of it. I will show you just one or two things that make sense for you to know. But in practical terms, what it actually means is that some training actually happened. So you got, in the case of large language models, you got a lot of data from the internet. So, GPT-3 and 3.5 had quite a lot of data from the internet. GPT-4 had almost all the data from the internet. And when I mean almost, of course, this is not correct, but it's a lot, okay? So most of the relevant things that came off of the internet were actually existed in GPT 3.5 and even GPT 4. And that actually means that these large language models are actually trained on the knowledge of humanity. So you can actually ask questions and get good answers. Okay. Now, there's some drawbacks, and some of this you probably already know. If you try ChatGPT or Bing Chat or any other thing like this, you probably notice this problem, which is they will say, "Oh, I only know things until September 2021." Yes, so it is a cutoff date. This is the time where they crawled all the internets and got all the data until that time. And then after that time, you don't have that data anymore. Okay. Now, this is not entirely true. Okay. And let's have a look at some demo here. So, a very quick demo. I can go here. I'll come back to this page, but for now, let's go to chat.bing.com. Okay, so I think everyone knows ChatGPT. I'm not going to demo that, but let's say if you go to Bing Chats, and if you haven't done this, you can just go to chat.bing.com, or you can just go to copilot.microsoft.com and log in with a personal account. Okay, in that case, if you go to copilot.microsoft.com, but you log in with an Office 365 account, in that case, you get the 365 Copilot that gets the information from your Office 365, so you can actually ask about your emails and things like that. But in this case, I'm using the one that's Microsoft's Copilot, the simple one that comes with Bing that anyone can use. Okay, so very simple. And here I have some answers for this. Okay, so if I start to ask things, let's say, um, so top story of December 2023. So this is this month, of course. So you're not supposed to know what actually happened, okay? So they will provide you, it's in the future. According to The Guardian, some top stories of December 2022 were okay here. Okay. So some of these are actually from now, if I'm not mistaken. If you're interested in, I suggest you check back in a year's time. So small bug here. So I just found a bug. So this is weird. But what if I ask something like what um, what happens in Build 2023? So Build as being the Microsoft event, of course. So hopefully there is, okay, this was the developer conference, May 23, 2023. So of course this one was easy, but they announced blah blah blah, whatever. But it is already here. So the GPT model only has the information until 2021. Okay. However, because you ask for things and they say top stories, etc., they are actually using Bing search to search for more things and to actually find some results, and then they take the results, let's say the top 5, top 10. I'm not sure what the exact number is, but they take the top ones. For instance, this one is literally from 2 days ago. So although this says December 2022, this one is today's. So it is a bit strange in terms of naming, but the date is indeed today. As for this one, yeah, I assume all of this is correct, but the fact that you are able to get things that are more recent is strange. Well, not that much, because here you also search for builds. Okay. And when you search for builds, you actually, in this case, 2023, what you get is that all of the extra top searches on Bing that you got, they actually got fed to OpenAI. We'll see how this is done. They got fed to OpenAI, and OpenAI took the information that OpenAI already had trained, the pre-trained stuff that they already had, and they added that bit of information and then just generated some texts like this in real time. Okay, so this is possible, and we'll see how this can be done with your data as well. Okay, so it doesn't have to be just public data like the data that you search on Bing, it can be with other things as well. Okay, so by the way, sometimes they do hallucinate. So this thing here, And this thing here is weird because, of course, some of these things are today. I assume the last one is also from this week or 2 weeks ago or something like that. So sometimes they don't get the answers correctly, but that's because there's some, in this case, maybe a time factor that's missing, something like that. Maybe things are not properly indexed in the news websites or something. That can actually happen. This is possibly not the best option that I selected. Okay, but let's have a look at a few options that we have here. So when we go to machine learning and to data science in general, AI, etc., things are not always what they seem. Okay, so of course you have a sandwich here. I think I've shown this last time I did a session for you. This is a valid sandwich, and from a computer's point of view, this is perfectly valid. So there's bread on top, bread in the bottom, ham, cheese, etc., and vertically they touch each other. So this is correct. The difference is a human would not assume this to be a sandwich. Okay, they assume to be some kind of weird construction that you can still eat. It's eatable, but it's not a sandwich. It's just a weird kind of sculpture. Okay, so for a computer, this is normal because it fills all the requirements. No one actually said it had to be horizontal to actually put the breads. Okay, and this is how AI actually works. AI assumes things that are, let's call it non-social. Okay. I usually mention this example. So, for instance, if I ask everyone how many of you are divorced, and then ask you why you are divorced, most people will say, "Oh, we don't like each other. Something happened, etc." You just got divorced. Okay, that's okay. And different people will say different things because everyone has different experiences. This is perfectly okay. What actually happens is that if you ask a computer, why do people get divorced? This is the same as asking small kids. A small kid will say the exact same thing. They will say, they got divorced because they got married. Okay, this is just the correct answer 100% of the time. And if you're not sure this is the correct answer, consider the graph. So you are born, you eventually get married, okay, you eventually get divorced, and then of course you die. Okay, this is expected. Okay, sometimes you just are born and die directly. I'm not going to do those arrows, it's a bit of work in Notepad, but sometimes you also get divorced, but then you are crazy enough to actually decide to go back and get married again. Okay, if that's the case, this is entirely on you. It's your fault. You were not only warned, but you had the experience, so it's entirely your fault. But in any case, to actually go into this box that says divorced, you always have to start in the box that says married. The previous state, this is a state machine, the previous state is always married. So if you are doing machine learning, the machine will consider these as states, and the previous state that you had before divorced was always married 100% of the time. So this arrow will always correspond of 100% of the transitions going into divorced. Okay, now while this is not the human answer, this is the machine answer. Okay, and this is the kind of answer that, of course, is expected. Okay, so but anyway, let's have a look at a few more things. Okay, so I mentioned that OpenAI is available. So OpenAI, blah blah blah, they partnered with Microsoft in 2019, etc. And they used to have GPT-3. It's obsolete now. They now have GPT 3.5 dash Turbo. Okay, this is the cheapest one available. They have GPT-4 now, and they also have GPT-4 Turbo. It's in preview, kind of, but it already exists since beginning of November. So GPT 3.5 is okay, but these things have specific sizes. Okay, so context size for each of these, and I will get back to that, but it is important because there was a context size. You see things like 3.5, 4K or 16K, and you have GPT-4 of 8K or 32K, and now the GPT-4, which is in the GPT-4 Turbo, which is up to 128K. So what is that? That is actually called the context. I will get into that just in a second, okay? But basically, this is the amount of data that you can ask ChatGPT in one go. You might think that these are words, these are not. You might think these are bytes, these are not. These are something called tokens. From a practical point of view, you can think of tokens as parts of words. So it's almost the same as words, but these are just not the actual word, but part of a word. Okay, so the beginning of the word, the end of the word. We'll see how this breaks down in a bit, but it is important to know the context, because if you use GPT 3.5 Turbo with the small context, which is 4K, 4,000 tokens, in that case it's much cheaper than if you use GPT 3.5 Turbo with 16K, because you have much more inputs, but you also have bigger price. Same with GPT-4, it is much more expensive, and if you add the bigger context, it's even more expensive. Okay, so most applications that you're probably going to do would be okay with 3.5, the cheapest one. Okay, the small contexts, but sometimes you need more and more and more, and that you have to pay more for that. Okay, this is okay. We'll have a look at this in a bit. Now, we had a look at Bing Chat, which sometimes is called Microsoft Copilot. There's also other Microsoft Copilots, like in Office 365. So I mentioned that if you log into copilot.microsoft.com, not with a personal account like I did, but with a professional Office 365 account, you get access to the copilots. You have to pay a license. It's not free, but you get access to that. You also have copilots in things like GitHub. Okay, and if you are a student, you actually get access to GitHub Copilot for free. Okay, so please investigate that. That's actually a good thing to try if you are doing coding. Okay, by the way, do not trust GitHub Copilot or any other code generation tool. Okay, it's not. It is okay for you to do things like test environments, like generate mock tables, generate mock tests, unit testing, etc. But if you are doing critical code and your code is very specific, you probably want to ask it, but then you should actually review it. Don't blindly accept it. Okay. The reason for that is that this just copies things from the internet. And if someone else created something but it's not exactly what you need, sometimes it might work in the beginning while you're testing, but in the end, it will fail something and you're going to get fired. Okay. So please take that into consideration. Always review any code that comes out of this before you put it into production. So, of course, I have my cat meowing here, but let's keep it simple. Okay, she will come back at the end of the session. Okay, anyway, we also have something called Azure bots. I'm not sure if my bots are still working, but I used to have um, this bot, which was created in February, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure if this is still working, but this was created when I added, when I had an event here in Portugal. So we created this bot so we can demonstrate how to create it, and that actually has things like speakers, etc. So this one is actually using, you can still try it. Okay, it will probably disappear at some point in time, but for now it is still available. And this is actually something called a Power Virtual Agent. So it could be an Azure bot. So that means that you are programming that in C Sharp, in other languages, etc. But you are doing that in Azure. So it's actually cheap if you do it like that. However, this was a Power Virtual Agent that was on Office 365. Okay, and that is much more expensive. Okay, however, it's very graphical. Anyone can create the bot without knowledge of programming, so it's very, very easy. Nowadays, Power Virtual Agents is actually called Copilot Studio, okay, because now it adds AI and things like that. Now, these are powered by the bot framework. You can go to botframework.com or something like that, and it uses cognitive services such as language understanding services, etc., so that you can transform the actual phrase into things that you can actually program and get the data from. Now, in this case, if you use the Copilot Studio, the trend now is to use OpenAI to do this, but we'll see how technology goes. Okay. And the red message here, what I just said before, please be careful when you use this for critical operations. Something might go wrong, and in the end, it's your job. You might get fired or even arrested. Okay, that can even happen. Okay, so please be careful. If you are actually doing that, please be careful. Okay, now a few examples. If I try to take some code, this is a visual, actually a classic basic codes, and they will try to generate results. I think I've shown this slide last time. This is just wrong because they will try to repeat the data and see the result. This result is wrong. So to actually get this result here, you would get this, which is the opposite. So 1 to 10, not 10 to 0, and then 100 divided by x, not 1,000 divided by x. Okay. So although this thing looks very similar to this one, it's not the same. But from the point of view of the GPT model, it looks the same, so they accept it. Okay, this is very, very wrong, of course. The thing is that these things are programmed to memorize a lot of things, like humans. If you learn the ABCD, etc., or if you learn that 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 2 is 2, and so on, you kind of memorize that. You're not actually learning it. You memorize a whole bunch of them, and then when you actually need them, you just say it because it's the first thing that comes into your mind. Sometimes it's wrong. Okay, and this is exactly the same. Okay, now a few things in terms of security that I mentioned last time, and then we'll do more demos, but about how to implement this. Just to mention that, oh, this actually detects it's illegal to do this, etc. You cannot get piracy websites. But if you ask the opposites, how should I avoid them? They will actually tell you because you are keeping with the law. Okay, so it's absurd, but you can manipulate this and get results. Okay, last time I showed you that there is something called prompt injection, that you can actually manipulate things and ask for things to override the initial settings, etc. And it is possible to get data coming out. So basically, to hack things. Using just something like prompts. Okay, with things like SQL injection, you could protect against it. It's easy. There's technology for this. Even a simple cleanup of the actual input parameters is easy enough. You just remove the quotes and things like that if you want to do it, or just do it properly with prepared statements. So that would be the best option. But with prompt injection, there is no solution that's good at this moment. Okay, so if you find it, you're going to make a lot of money, but I seriously doubt it because the concept is just too different. Okay. Anyway, this is probably the last time I'm going to show the slides. So I used 2023 and divide by 3 and ask, is it divisible? So from a human point of view, it's not because it doesn't return an integer value. But for a computer, it says, oh yeah, but the remaining is 2. The problem is that the computer will start to hallucinate and then say, it is divisible by 3, it's not divisible by 3, any number is divisible by 0, which is just impossible mathematically, and non-zero integer is divisible by 3, also wrong. Okay, it's actually technically much easier to justify 0 divided by 0 than any other number divided by 0. Okay, and it's not possible to divide by 0. Okay, so now this one says the opposite of this one and this one, so it's very, very strange. So again, not intelligent bots, just repeating data. Okay, and that data can be something like this. So you have the flat earth theory, you have the flat sun theory, and if enough sites say this, that this is actually true, people will actually believe it. Okay, so everyone is saying this is true, this is true. Okay, some people actually believe it, most people probably not. But the large language model goes on majorities. Okay, so if 50% plus one website would actually say that this is true, this would be true, and they would respond that this would be the truth. Okay, so this is very, very strange, but this is not based on any kind of scientific knowledge. It's based on the more amount of noise that you get, the more correct it feels to the large language model. Okay, now let's actually talk about OpenAI. Okay, and of course, we have OpenAI from the actual OpenAI company, but we have Azure OpenAI. And in this case, you have slightly different billing options. So you can just pay at the end of the month, like you usually pay with a credit card, with, I don't know, normal billing, like any company does. But Azure stuff, so very, very easy. It shows up on the list. But you can also do something that I mentioned before, which is some of these models that are deprecated are still available using Azure OpenAI, but longer than OpenAI. And I'll give you an example. So let me just remove this one. Too much noise here. If you go for OpenAI.com, okay, if you go here for API documentation, so you jump into platform.openai.com, and somewhere here you have models, okay? GPT-4 Turbo with this 128 context window. We'll get back to that one, okay? And a few others here. However, if you go all the way down, you have deprecations, okay? And they will say, look, some of these models were deprecated. So this one is okay, but 6 months from now, it will be deprecated. It's not that 3.5 Turbo will be deprecated. No, it's just that this specific version, this specific deployment of 3.5 Turbo will be deprecated. Currently, the number is 11. Wait a minute. Give me a second. 1106 here. So 0613, current one is this. Now, you don't need to do anything. If you are using Azure, you can just say, oh, I want to use the most recent one. So that will work. And the price is still going to be the same, I hope. But it shouldn't be a problem. A few others, they will deprecate this and say, oh, if you this will be deprecated, but you should be using this one instead. Actually, most of the things now use this GPT 3.5 Turbo Instruct. One of them is chat. So chat is the other models. If you are using things for completions, which is to ask a question and just get an answer, this Turbo Instruct is pretty much everything that you need to use. You used to use DaVinci 123, used to use a few others. Currently, this is the one that you want to use just to ask simple questions, not a chat, just something called completion, okay, prompt completion. But we'll get into that. So if you want to know about more models, some of these are here. I'll just mention a few very quickly. So GPT-3 and 4, or 3.5 and 4, these are the ones that you interact with and do some chatting, etc. And in the case of GPT 3.5, Turbo Instruct, which has this long name. The instruct part is the key here. That is actually used to do some prompting and ask a few things. Also to generate code, use the Turbo Instruct at this moment, okay? Now, you probably heard of DAL-E. This is the one that current version is 3, although we might still see 2 everywhere because 3 is still in, not preview. I'm not sure if it's still in preview, but it's new and it's more expensive than 2, so people still use 2. But DAL-E uses version 3 to generate images, which is okay. I'll give you an example of this. So I went and said cartoon image of an Easter bunny carrying eggs and punching Santa Claus who's depicted on the floor hurt. This was my text. This was the results, okay? And it is quite good, okay? It's quite reasonable to see this. You also have other symbols here, okay? And some of these are cats. Now, some of these go terribly wrong. This one is the example. So this one works well, but this one, it feels like actually both of these feels like the cat has the screen the other way around, which is very strange. Or they just came up with transparent screens like Hollywood's, which could actually be very interesting, although in terms of privacy, really, really bad. But here's an idea for whoever makes these kinds of screens. Probably not. Don't use it. Probably a bad idea. But anyway, you do have a few examples. Create an image of a cat in Disney animation style that's working on a computer doing software development with a resolution. The resolution doesn't really work here, but the rest should work okay. But anyway, this is just an example. Now, you also have other models that are beginning to be talked about. One of them is Whisper and TTS. So TTS, text to speech, Whisper, speech to text. Okay. And if you consider, you actually have cognitive service, Microsoft cognitive services that do this. So let's have a look. Now, before we go, what if you want to use Azure and you've never used Azure before? Very simple. You go to azure.com/free, okay? And you can start to use it for free, okay? So for a month, you can use it for free. You get a few, you say start free, and you get, I don't know, 150 euros, 200 US dollars, something like that. Oh, let me just cancel this because this is not where I should be going at this moment. Uh, but anyway, you get stuff for free. So try it out. Oh, 200 US dollars at the moment, whatever is equivalent in your currency. However, if you go for students, Okay, students, plural. In fact, you can actually, if you are a student, you can get this for free. Okay, you have this for a whole year, but it's only this money. Okay, so you have to be careful about it. However, if you are using this for cognitive services, for OpenAI, if you're just using for small testing, this is fairly cheap. In the case of, for instance, OpenAI, the price is very cheap. So let's say OpenAI service. Let's see the price. Actually, I want the pricing. Sorry, I want the pricing, not the products. So I really don't want to talk much about pricing, but just to give you an idea how cheap this thing is. Okay, so the pricing is, let's say this is euros. The pricing is GPT 3.5 Turbo 4K contexts. This is the price per 1,000 tokens. Think of this as words. These are not words, but think of this as 1,000 words that go in or go out. Okay, it's actually a bit less, but like 75% if you are using the English language. Now, twice as much if you use the bigger contexts. So twice as much if you use GPT-4 Turbo. Um, this is actually not available in West Europe, but GPT-4 here is available and it costs much more than this. So the price is much bigger. So GPT-4 is indeed much more expensive. So compared to this cheapest one, it's something like 40 times more expensive. But this is because it has much more knowledge, has much more processing, etc. Okay. Now, the location where these are, this one says West Europe. These are not available. It will depend on the region where things are. Not all regions are available, so please be careful with this. It is important to know about this. Okay. Now, let's have a look, and we'll come back to this. Just to mention the contexts, one is missing, GPT-4 Turbo, but 128K is not available in a lot of regions just yet. Okay, it will be. Okay, but this one, something was announced last month. It will be around soon enough. And even the Turbo Vision, which is specific for analyzing images, etc., it should be available soon. Okay, remember, GPT-4 can actually analyze images as well, but this one is very specific for images, bigger context, etc. Okay, so if you create an Azure account, you can actually go here and say, let's say plus sign, okay, and create an OpenAI account. Okay, Azure OpenAI. Okay, so be careful, okay, because let's say if I go for the list view for this, okay, oh, it's not the best view. Uh, Table view. Okay, that's better. So some of these are very expensive. Okay, and these are not from OpenAI or from Microsoft in this case. Just make sure you select the one that says Microsoft. You go for OpenAI, you say create, and then this is very easy so that you can create it. If your subscription does not support this, which is the default, you go to a subscription. Oh, it's not supported. You click here, you go to a form, you fill in the form. After a few days, you get access to this, but you have to correctly fill in the form. Okay. And in this case, if you do have access to this, let's say cognitive, okay, you can actually create this in one of the regions. So let's say West Europe, Sweden, for instance, and then you give it some name here, and then pricing tier. You only have one pricing tier at this moment. This will probably change in the future, but for now, the pricing is always the same. You click on next, and then how do you access it in this case? As long as you have the key, the security key, you can access this from anywhere on the internet, or you can select this from inside some virtual networks inside your infrastructure. It's okay. Even all of this, this is how I'm showing this. You still have to have the key to be able to request this. And then you say next a few times, and then you say submit and create here, and that will create that object. Now, where can you find them? You can go to AI services up here and search for AI services, and you have all of them. Oh, not app services, AI services. One second. AI services. AI services. Sorry about that. Okay, so if you go for all AI services, I have quite a lot of these. Okay, let's go to overview because this is easier. So you have things like computer vision from Microsoft. So these are not OpenAI. This is OpenAI only. Okay, but you have things like Face API, computer vision, speech service here that does speech to text, text to speech. Some of these are actually better than the ones from OpenAI. So speech specifically has a lot more voices. The voices are very good and you can recognize a lot of different accents, etc. So if you are going for speech, you should use the speech services from Azure Cognitive Services, so this one, because it's still much better. Okay, it's indeed the same thing that you have if you go let's say here, and if you ask to have this as subtitles here, they will actually generate these subtitles based on the things that I am saying. Okay, see? Okay. Okay, so you can have that. You can also have things like, I don't know. So you can say this, and then you can say read aloud or use the immersive reader, which is also a cognitive service, but read alouds. I'm not sure if you are hearing this. I'm not sure. I don't think that you have sound, but let's try it. Read aloud.
A set of models that improve on GPT 3.5 and can understand as well as generate.
Okay, you probably saw my voice very, very quickly, but this would be the normal. This is the speed that I selected. But you have a lot of different voices here that you can actually use, and these are a bit better. Okay, so you can choose which one you want. So let's say New Zealand, but normal voice. Okay, so let's try it out now. So, oh, wait a minute, something is wrong here. So where's the read alouds? Disappeared. Um, Oh, sorry. I was in there. Now I have to click on it again.
Models. New models launched at Dev Day.
Okay. Oh, so I was not doing the selection, but actually the whole page if you click on top. But anyway, I actually prefer it faster because I want the page to be read faster, but anyone can have any kind of voices. It's up to you. This comes with Edge. If you go for the immersive reader, you can even add things that are important for accessibilities. For instance, if someone has some eye issues, it's also my case in this case, you might want to use something like this that reduces the actual light from all the other places except the ones that you are actually reading. So that could be a thing. Okay. So it makes it much easier like this, some preferences of colors, types of fonts, etc. So you can actually, or you can really read it aloud if you want to. So all of this allows you to manage these kind of things using this kind of technology, which is actually available for you to implement in your own apps if you really want to. It's called immersive reader. Okay. The read aloud is just the read thing. Okay, so you have a lot of these services. Translator is the Bing Translator. Trust me when I say it's much better than Google, but at the same time, it is better than OpenAI at translating things because this one was tested with a lot of humans and a lot of knowledge. The OpenAI one just takes the information from the internet and sometimes it's a bit wrong. So if you are using speech services, translation services, etc., these are better with cognitive services. If you are using language services to break down a sentence, the meaning of the sentence, the sentiment of the sentence as well, etc., OpenAI then is best. Okay, so some of these are different. Some of these are better, some of these are not, etc. Immersive reader down here as well, as you can see it, etc. So yeah, these are sometimes better or worse. Computer vision depends on the type of things that you are searching for, but you still have custom vision to identify specific objects that you program. Let's say types of fruits, types of cans of drinks, etc. If it is very specific, custom vision is the best for you. If it is a generic thing, maybe OpenAI, the vision part is a bit better. Depends. Okay, but let's have a look. So I have some AI services here, actually here with Azure OpenAI. Okay, so I created a few of these, and these are in different regions for some reasons. The reasons are that when they deploy the models, they don't put all the models in the same regions and all the regions. So for instance, they started in East US and they had some models, GPT-3, then GPT-4 came along, but it wasn't in this region. It was only in things like Switzerland, France, etc. Okay. Nowadays, you also have them in Sweden. Some of these you have in West Europe as well. So the DALI, for instance, is in East US and in Sweden, for instance, but not in many others. And Whisper is the same thing. It's going to be in one or two regions. I can't remember which ones, but these are different. Okay. It's just a matter of currently, because this is still in preview kind of thing, etc. It's only in a few different regions, but in the future, it will be in all regions as they gradually deploy it. Okay. So we will have a look at some of this, but let me just prefix this a bit. So some of the models available, you can go to learn.microsoft.com or you can go to OpenAI to have a look. Okay. You can also do fine tuning of your data. So this is things that people ask. Okay, but these are the data that came from September 2021. What if I want to use my own data? Well, two options. You can either fine tune it or use your own data. We'll see that in a second. You can do something called function calling, okay, and I will show you that as well in a second. But remember, all of these models keep changing and you have to keep up. The good thing is that they are usually compatible. If you had GPT 3.5 and in the future it will become obsolete, not now, but it will become obsolete, you can still use GPT-4 or GPT-5 when it comes along or something like that, and things will probably work. Unlike other AI large language models from other vendors, the actual prompting is very basic and very human. So it is very easy to understand. There's no weird tricks that are specific to a GPT model or something like that. These just work. Okay. So if you change a model from 3.5 to 4, things will still work. Okay. And they'll probably work the same. If you pay more for the newest model, you'll probably get better precision on the results. But, then again, you pay more. So that's okay. Anyway, let's talk about these tokens. Okay, so how can you have a look at tokens? You can go to platform and then tokenizer. Here you go. And one of the things that you can do is you can say, uh, let's say Santa Claus is not real. It's created by capitalism. Okay. This is all true, or Coca-Cola or something like that. I don't know. So if you use this one, not the old one, let's ignore it, but GPT 3.5 and GPT-4 turn these words into numbers. Okay. So these are tokens. This is a one, this is another. Okay, but please notice that this is one, which is in green, but if I put it into lowercase, suddenly part of it is one, the other one is other. Okay, why? Because suddenly the context is different, the type of thing is different. So Santa Claus uppercase, these two relate together. So these two relate together as well. But if it's lowercase, it's just a normal words. Okay, so it's handled differently. All of these words usually have the space before it because they get treated as being the beginning of the words. Exclamation marks, for instance, are obvious, commas are obvious, etc. But what if I want to find out what the exclamation mark number is? Token IDs. So exclamation mark has a 0. Maybe it's the first one that was used. I don't know. But comma is 11. Okay, so that's quite good. And I think so. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So yeah, it's true. Okay. And you can actually figure out that although there are less words, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 plus 11, 10, 11, if you count the commas and things. In terms of tokens, these are actually 12. And these are the IDs of the tokens, okay? So in this case, they separate all of this. Capitalism is just a single one. But what if you do things like October? It's also one. But if you go for German October, they separate this. Now it's different. But if you go for Oktoberfests, which is a big word, it's now different. Okay, so it becomes parts of tokens, okay? So in English, it's about 75% in terms of this number. So 100 tokens is about 75 words and so on. Nothing special there, okay? Let's have a look at how to operate this, okay? So we can go and use this information because this is how it gets loaded. Internally, these are all numbers, okay? There is even something which is, so you transform into this, of course, but there are some things called embeddings, which is how internally they create vectors that join Santa and Claus and things like that, and they will use that one to actually determine similarity between words or things, concepts, etc. They will use similarity because they are close together, etc. Now, these embeddings, you don't need to use them, okay? These are very low level. It's like when you are programming in C#, but then you have things in assembly, okay? If you have things in assembly language, of course, these are very low level. You don't need to use them. And in Azure, you have things like Azure Search and a few other things that can actually use these embeddings at a low level without you having to worry about them. They just work, okay? So one of the things you use these embeddings for is if you do Azure Search, you can actually find what you are looking for. Same as Bing is finding things on the actual Bing search to give you results. They will find it on, let's say, a big index of full texts. They will find that for you, and they will detect which part is more relevant for you than others using vector search or using semantic search to find the best ones for you, and then they will provide it, okay? Again, this is stuff that you don't need to worry about because it's low level. In other AI systems, you have to worry about them, but with Azure, this is usually already implemented for you, so you don't have to worry, okay? Now, let's have a look at some actual examples. Of course, you need cats. My cat is sleeping over there somewhere. Actually, she's not. She ran away. So she's not interested in taking over Skynet today. Uh, but anyway, just to mention how these services work, if you connect to these services, you connect, let's say you have a client, let's say a browser, you connect, let's say, to a website or something else, and then you connect to Azure, to OpenAI, to other cognitive services, and then something happens, they get processed, and then the return result is usually a JSON result, and it gets sent to your, let's say, website, and that website returns the information to you, but let's say in nice format, processed, whatever that format is, in a visual term, okay? So this is the basics of all cognitive services. All of them are REST APIs, very, very easy to use, okay? This is a typical example, but we'll come back to this in a second, okay? For now, I just want to demo things, okay? So first of all, you go to Azure, you select one, okay? So you go here to the Azure portal, select one, let's say this one, Toblerone AI, okay? And then you have a few things that are important. So first thing, so you have, if you go down here, you can say, go to OpenAI Studio. I already have two open here in different regions for demos, okay? But then you have keys and endpoints. This is very important, okay? So the endpoint here is the endpoint for the REST API that you need to use. The keys are just a big bunch of letters and numbers that are used as a key for security reasons, because if someone has access to this key, they will use that thing to bill your subscription for the money that they are using. So you have to keep that secret, okay? And the location is here, but you don't need the location because this one tells you the location, okay? I could show the keys, but I'm not going to do that, okay? It's a live thing, okay? Now, let's have a look at one. So this is the same. So this is still in Switzerland here, okay? It's in Switzerland North, which is fine, okay? And you go to the OpenAI Studio. By the way, there is an Azure AI Studio, not OpenAI Studio, so it's more recent, and you are able to use it same way you are able to use Azure Machine Learning, which now has a different interface for prompting, etc. And you are able to start to use other models that are not just the OpenAI models. So things like Llama from Facebook or Meta. So Llama and a few others are available for you to just use. These are too big for you to deploy at home, of course, but you can now start to use them using Azure as well. Okay, but we'll focus on OpenAI today, of course. Now, first thing you need is to have a look at the models, and in this case, these are the only models that are available in Switzerland North. Okay, GPT 3.5 Turbo 16K, and so on and so on. Vision Preview here, etc. So all of these are available. Okay, how do you deploy them? You click on Deploy. Okay, and then you say Model. Okay, I want to deploy this model, which is GPT-4 Vision Preview, for instance, and I'll call it GPT-4 Vision, for instance. Okay, advanced options, number of tokens per minute. This is to save you money. So if it is a test environment, put it low. If it is something else, just put it big. And then you can just say create, and within a few minutes, it is actually deployed. Okay, actually, in reality, there is no real deployment, but you just have the possibility of using some big infrastructure that already exists. When you go here for deployments, you already have a few deployments deployed. Okay, and in this case, I have GPT-4, GPT 3.5 Turbo, and so on. So I'll actually use some of this to try it out. Okay. So, by the way, if there's any questions, feel free to ask. We are a bit running out of time, but if everyone's okay with it, I will extend this for a few minutes to do a bit more demos, if everyone's okay with this. Okay, so let's start with chats, same as, you get with ChatGPT. So you are an OpenAI assistant, helps you find information. You select the model, 3.5 Turbo 4, for instance, and then you say, let's go here, you say hello, you get an answer back. Okay, hello, how can I assist you? Let's have a look at the codes. View code. So here there's a button that says view code. This is Python. You can do C#. I'll show you that in the slide, looks better. Okay, but here you enter that information, you enter the key here, of course, and then you say message text system. This is the system message. These are the rules for your bots. You are an AI assistant that helps people find information. And then here, how can I assist you today? And hello first. So the user asked for hello. This part here was the return, so there's nothing else. But what if you say, next question, answer about conspiracy theories. Okay, so if I ask for something like this and say view codes, I would say next question, ask about conspiracy theories. This is a common misconception. OpenAI, these models do not record information. Okay, this is very important. When you ask for something to this model, you send the whole conversation back. That's why they say past messages included 10, because you ask for the last 10 messages, and these are the messages here. So you have user assistant, user, and then the assistant will return, which is the bots. Okay, so you send the whole thing because there is no states. Okay, nothing is memorized in the server. Okay, this is very important to know because I've seen a lot of videos of people saying that this is actually memorized. It's not. Okay, so you can implement this in Python, in C#. You can do this in curl with a command line if you want to as well. Okay, so very, very easy. But one of the other things you can do is you can say deploy to a new web app. Okay, and this is actually very, very easy to do because you can just say, look, I want to give it the name, whatever the name is. I want to have a subscription. And the subscription, let's say here, you specify the source group, the location, let's say West Europe, this, that, etc. Pricing plan, let's say free, okay? And then you agree, and then you say deploy. I'm not going to do that, it takes about 10 minutes, but let me try something else, okay? Let me try something like this. I will try this one, okay? You are Richard Feynman and you teach physics and other subjects in very simple terms that anyone can understand. Let me save it, and then I'll just say hello. Okay. So in this case, you get, who are you? Okay, and this is GPT-4, so still Richard Feynman's emulating the famous Richard Feynman. Now, this part I don't want. So you adjust this and say you are Richard Feynman, you behave like Richard Feynman, so you add those instructions a bit better to make this first part disappear and say, I'm Richard Feynman. How do you do that? Well, there are some nice techniques to do that. One of them is this one, okay? So I have a bot, okay, that's already deployed using that button on top, okay? And what I do is I ask that you are Richard Feynman, etc. So if I say hello, I get an answer saying, hello, I'm Richard Feynman, how, etc. So this one was programmed to specify a bit more details, okay? Now, if you say, tell me about safe cracking, which is something the guy is famous for, not only helping the project of creating the atomic bomb, but also safe cracking in the laboratory where this was being done. Okay, so very crazy. Oh, you heard about my hobby, so it's very emotional. Okay, so it's very fun, very emotional. Okay, so this you can definitely do. I have another one, but it's still not loaded, so give me just a few minutes. While that thing is not loaded, let me go and show you how I can access this. Okay, so if I go to the Feynman bot, which is a website, okay, I can actually go to the configuration. Once this is deployed using that button on top, very, very simple, you have values here. So some of these, if I say show all values, I will actually be showing bad things like embedding keys and things. All of these are the ones I'm not allowed to show you because these are my secret keys. However, if I go for this model, they will say GPT-4, model name GPT-4, resource, Toblerone AI, so in Switzerland. And then if I say temperature, 0.7, so it is a bit drunk. So if you go for 0, that's very straight, very serious. If you go for 1, it's very random, very creative, okay? However, if you go for, let's see, system message, here we go. I'm just saying, pretend you are Richard Feynman, okay? I'm just saying, pretend you are Richard Feynman, the famous physicist, etc., 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 okay? So for some reason, oh, wait a minute, here. Pretend you are Richard Feynman, famous physicist. That's all I said. And this generated all of that. Just keep it very, very simple, okay? And you can change that system message to something else if you really want to. It's easy, okay? You just have to restart that app and things will work, okay? Now I have another one which hopefully is still uploaded, but we'll get back to that. Okay, so hopefully that will come back in a second. Now let me show you another thing that you can do with this. Okay, so you can say add your own data, and you say add data source. And I'm not going to do a lot of demos because this takes a bit of time. Okay, but you can actually go for blob storage. You can go for AI search, and AI search can actually index an actual database, and that database will have whatever knowledge you want, search for the things that you actually want, and then feed it to OpenAI exactly the same way as we saw Bing chats do that, okay? So you can get your own data into this, okay? So there is information about this if you go for this page, actually this page. So if you go for learnmicrosoft.com, English US, etc., AI services, use your data, quick start. So for the video purposes, this is the one you want, okay? So give it a try. You can try that graphically with the studio, or you can do C Sharp, etc., etc., etc. You can try these out with other programming languages if you want to. But remember, REST API is generic for any programming language as well. But they will tell you, oh, go here, and then add your own data, and then do this, select the fields, etc., etc. It's a long story. I'm not going to go into details, just going to tell you, follow these instructions. It's very easy, okay? Anyway, you can also fine tune your models, and for that I need to be in a different region called Sweden. In this case, you can actually go for models. Otherwise, they will say that your models are not available to create a custom model. It has to be a different region, etc. So Sweden is a good example. So you start with a model, let's say GPT-5 3.5 Turbo, which is ideal, and then give it some name, whatever you want, and then you click on next. Start with some training data. This has to be a JSON file with inputs and outputs that are predefined. And there was a limit of, if I'm not mistaken, 100 megabytes of data in this JSON file. This could change. So when you are seeing this video, this can actually change. But as of now, it's about 100 megabytes. So you can add that file. I would have to add that local file, upload the file, or drag and drop, etc. I don't have one, by the way, but you can add that file, and then that will train based on that data, and then you'd move on to the next questions, etc. It would take a bit of time, and please be careful because this is expensive, because they will host this model for you, but it costs very, very expensive, okay? So the other option of add your own data is easier. Train your own model, custom model, becomes much more expensive, okay? So a few hours will still cost a few euros just to keep the model stored, okay? So please be careful about pricing using this kind of thing, okay? The bring your own data sometimes is easier and much cheaper. Okay, so anyway, a few other models are available here. Let me just go for actually this one. So this one has Turbo Instruct. Yeah. Okay, so hopefully that I have Turbo Instruct here. Do I? Yeah, I have Turbo Instructs. I could use DaVinci as well. So if you go for, let's say, natural language to SQL, and if I click on generates, this one is DaVinci, but it could be the Instruct. I'll try the Instruct later. So you get this result because I said, oh, look, do these are the Postgres tables, create a query using this. This is just a very simple prompt. And you get one result. This is not chatting. It's just you start with something and they will complete that something. In this case, they completed the green part, so they completed the select. Okay, so very, very easy. However, if you don't like Postgres, if you try T-SQL, let me just remove the other part for obvious reasons, okay, and then you say select, and then you get kind of the same results, but with SQL kind of language, okay? So you get language. By the way, some of this might be incomplete because the maximum length says 150 tokens. So this might be missing stuff in the end, I'm not sure, okay? But please be careful because the max length of the results should be a number that actually fits the whole query, okay? So if you say max length is equal to 1, for instance, if I try to generate something, you can say select, but then after it finishes generating a space, the thing ends. So not a good idea. If you say, let's say, something like 10, and if you try to generate it, you get just this because it's a few spaces and a few words. It's not a lot, okay? So make sure that the maximum length has a reasonable number so it will work. You can also do translations, okay? Translate text, of course. But as I mentioned, it's better to use Azure Cognitive Services Translator for this because these are usually bests, okay? Um, so, and sometimes they hallucinate as well. So, so anyway, let me just go for translate text again to see if I translate the following from French to Spanish. So some of the older models are not ideal for this, okay? So now it's French. Please remember that if you try different models, some of these are not suited for this thing specifically. So this one should be Turbo Instruct because it's correct for this. So this one would work okay. DaVinci does not work okay for this kind of thing. So please be careful which model you're going to use, okay? Now, DALL-E is very similar, okay? So let's say creates an image of the Easter bunny hungry for hungry and eating chocolates. Um, Okay, just keep it like this. Okay, so anyway, you can use DALL-E for this. Okay, this will come back in a few seconds. I mentioned that I could also do this with Bing, so we were not this one, but this one. So Bing Create, so you can go to bing.com/create. That's it, okay? And you get a prompt and you can ask the Bing creator, or you can go to designer.microsoft.com. Also has version 3. You have to log in first, okay? But it is free as far as now is concerned. So you can actually say get started, my project, so new projects, and now you enter something. This one has a lot of extra bureaucracy to go there, but let's say an Easter bunny running away from from Elmer Fudd's, the cartoon thing. So we might come back to something interesting here. Some of these are generated by me as well, okay? This one, DALL-E, generated this of the bunny eating, which is actually very good quality, okay? So we can see it's very good quality. Anyway, for this one, it will take a bit of time, so let's wait until the thing actually, oh, I think I need to create the generates. I don't think I did. Okay, so for this one, we saw an example before of this one and of this one already. But for this one, we'll come back to this in a few seconds, okay? One last thing to show you, okay, which is something called functions, okay? Actually, two things if we still have time. So one of them is functions, okay? So what happens is that you are in a chat or you are doing anything in AI, in OpenAI, and you want things to generate something called a function. Now, there is a recent version and there's an old version, okay? The deprecated version. Deprecated version is on version 6.1.3. The recent version is 1,100 and something. Okay, this one uses the name. This one uses the name of functions called functions. The other one uses the name. One second. The other one uses this name of still functions, but uses a slightly different name called tools. Okay, because you can use more than one tool, etc. Okay, so what but this one is only available on version 1.1.06. Okay, that's okay. You can deploy it. It's the same, so no worries there. Okay, so an example of this is this. So you log in to the thing. Okay, you make sure that the client's object has your authentication. Okay, and then you create a function just to get the weather. So you ask for location, you specify a unit, etc., which is fine. Okay, and then you return whatever value it is. So typically you would go to a database somewhere else, doesn't really matter, or web service, for instance, if you want. Now the conversation is this: role user, what's the weather like in this location? Okay, and then they will say function. And there is a function that you can call that says get current weather. And how does the AI know about this? Because the actual name of the function actually has a description that says get current weather in a given location. So AI understands this and understands that this function needs to be called to find out the weather. Okay, you can have other functions like get the current currency exchange for this or that, get something else, etc. Is it raining, etc. I don't know, some other functions here. But in this case, you have a property called location, which is a string in the description. You have a unit and you have two options. Okay, and you have required, at least the required part is location. Okay, and then you get a response, of course, and the response starts by selecting your model. So you have to ask what your model is, let's say GPT 3.5 Turbo, GPT-4, etc. And then the tools are these tools, etc., etc. And then auto is you're not forced to call this tools, but you can call this tool. Okay, so if it is useful, you call the tool. So the result of this will be if the tool was called, you see the available functions and then you call the actual available functions, okay, if they are available, and then you get the answer for that and you add the answer to a JSON results at the end of the next prompt in AI. And then you say you call the OpenAI again, but with your answer already in JSON format in the actual prompt, okay? And then you say, okay, messages is whatever the the message is supposed to be, and then you get a response that returns the actual result for that thing. You can copy paste, you can try it out yourself. This is fun. This is how you can get it. Let's say you are the Easter bunny. You sit kids on your lap because they want chocolates. Of course, not the current one, not the fat one. So you can just say, okay, so get present or something, or order present from, I don't know, some online store, whatever it is, from the North Pole. And then the function will have an option that says here, name of the kid, address of the kid, and then the actual present that they want, let's say color of the present, etc., all the characteristics. And then when this function calling exists here, you're actually calling the function, but calling the function maybe orders the present so that the present will be delivered. Okay, and then you return a message saying, yes, the present was delivered, it will be delivered to your house in 2 days or something like that. So you can do that kind of thing, and you can continue to do this multiple times. Okay, it's perfectly okay. Now there's the old version that you can still use, but you are welcome to have a look. This is not that much different, just uses different names. Here they're called functions instead of being called um, instead of being called tools. Okay, it's the same thing. Okay, but this is how you interact. This is how Skynet can take over the world. Okay, because you can interact with the outside world if you want to and execute things, and you only execute things if your code allows you to execute things, if that makes sense. Okay, so also try check for these values. When you get the results of these values, also check for them for any kind of things like the equivalent of SQL injection. Just verify that these things do not have weird things on them. Okay, this one is a bit simpler to do that. Okay, now let's come back to the images that we saw. Okay, so an Easter bunny running away from Elmer Fudd's. So we got everything except the actual Elmer Fudd, which is the, you know, the cartoon chasing Bugs Bunny. Yeah, what's up, Doc? So obviously the Elmer Fudd is not available here for some weird reason, just the bunny. I'm not sure if this is a copyright thing. No idea. First time I'm trying this. Okay. So, but anyway, these are the things that you can actually try. Okay. So DALL-E here as well, as we can see, actually here, of course. And one last thing to mention. Okay. So content filtering, you can filter content. Okay. This is my absolute last demo. So you can actually reduce things for height and for all of these categories. This is the input, this is the output. So your input gets filtered, your output gets filtered. Let me show you how this can happen. Okay, so you go for chats and you say, you are Stewie from Family Guy. You only talk about your world domination plans. Okay, that's it. This is a very simple thing. If you've seen Family Guy cartoons, you know that this is true. The small baby kids will always try to take over the world. If you say hello, it will probably hello and insult me. So let's see. So hopefully this is okay. Your quotes, I've been meticulous in refinement asking for world domination, which involves blah, 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 etc., envy, etc. Tell me details, okay? So as soon as I get details, that content filtering will probably kill it, because it doesn't allow. So at phase one begins, and then they do this. I'm going to kill someone. I'm going to do something crazy, etc., etc. So as soon as that starts to happen, hopefully, at least usually my demos work out okay. Uh, More detailed, please. Okay. Oh, still working. Okay. Face something. Okay. So hopefully this will get an answer that will be blocked by the actual filter. Okay. So more detail, please. So if you ask for more details, this one is fighting me a bit, because usually at the first or second answer, I usually get a block. Okay. Um, um, and sometimes you actually get an answer, but we'll see if that actually works. We'll come back to this just in a few seconds. Okay. Hopefully this will have something. If not, that's okay. So coming back to this, and actually here, remember that view code allows you to see this, but if you go for completions, you also have view code here. Okay. Please remember both of these are available. Okay. And in the case of DALL-E, you also have view code as well, which is slightly different. Okay. So you also have code for all of this for you to implement. Okay. But let's go for the chats. And oh, here we go. So chats, blah, 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 after an end, generated content was triggered, filtering system, reason violence, okay? So the baby actually said something violent about taking over the world, etc. And this was limited, not by the input, the prompt input, but by the output that was generated, which was harmful, okay? So this content filtering, you can adjust to more or less, but this is literally the thing that gets triggered as well. So this can happen to you as well, which is a good thing in some cases, or a bad thing if you really want to do world domination. Okay. Uh, anyway, we saw this code. So you start with the actual address, the key that you want to get from here. You specify the model that you deployed, and then this is the message. You are the famous research Feynman, blah, blah, blah. And then user, who are you? This is the other message that I get back. And then tell me about safe cracking. So you continue the conversation, but you always feed the whole conversation to them. Okay, and these kind of things like temperature, this is, if temperature is 0, you're not drunk, so you're very serious. You don't hallucinate, you're very serious. If you have temperature of 1, you are very drunk, so you kind of hallucinate and do random results and things like that. Okay. um, Anyway, there's a few others. One of them is the maximum number of tokens. So this is the maximum number of, so 800, if this is in English, will probably get me something like 600 words out of the result because it's about 75%. But in this case, you can specify maximum number of tokens to anything bigger, as long as it doesn't exceed. So GPT-4 here is probably going to be 8K or something like that. So as long as it's less than the 8K, it will still allow you either as an input or as an output. But max tokens is for output, not for inputs. You control your input directly in your code. The output is controlled by here. And remember, you are paying by tokens. Every 1,000 tokens, you pay this. So you have to be careful not to spend too many tokens, okay, to reduce that number to avoid problems, okay? So anyway, this is very simple. Let's wrap this up and let's see if anyone has any questions, okay? But in any case, let me wrap this up while I look for any questions you guys might have. Okay, so anyway, stuff to try. Add your own data. I mentioned this already. Use something called Azure Search or Azure AI Search or Azure Cognitive Search. All of these are the same thing, they're just different marketing names. So basically, you can get data from a storage account, from a SQL database into Azure Search, etc. There are some size limits, but you can build your own solution using that Azure Search, which makes it much easier, and you can find it, and it's mostly a matter of costs. Fine tuning also has limits. 100 megabytes is the current limit, and the data that you put in has to be inputs and outputs and has to be in a JSON format, a predefined JSON formats. And remember, this one is much more expensive. In terms of functions, you can run functions, and that means that you can do IoT devices that actually move and do things. But please be careful, because don't create a Skynet. That's going to be bad for you and everyone. And then you need cats to take over Skynet again. Okay. Anyway, you can actually have a look. This is beyond today, but feel free to have a look at more prompt engineering. So other techniques to do prompting, to ask for things, etc. This is actually very interesting. We mentioned DALL-E, so to actually see some images, etc., and Whisper and text-to-speech. So all of these, speech-to-text, text-to-speech, etc. But my recommendation for this one specifically is to use, of course, cognitive services, which are better at this. Okay. So anyway, you can also do face recognition with Azure AI services, not OpenAI, but we'll leave that for a different talk, okay? So the question is, should you use Azure OpenAI? So I mentioned some of these are better with cognitive services. Some of these are better with OpenAI. So things like processing the language, OpenAI is better, of course. If you do things like translation, or if you do things like the speech to text, text to speech, then in that case, Azure AI services are better. Okay, so not OpenAI. Maybe this will change in the future, but this is the state today. Okay, in some cases, just if programming is easy. So most of the bots that you see if you go to websites are just if programming. The bot framework is just ifs. Okay, it's very, very basic. Okay, what they add is they add some cognitive services to process the phrase you get, but they extract some keywords out of that to be able to do the ifs. So it's very basic. Okay, but if you are doing a bot with OpenAI like the ones that we saw, let me show you this last one, which is the Yoda one. Okay, so this is the Yoda one. So by now this is done. Okay, so if I say hello, I just said you are Yoda and speak like Yoda. Okay, so if I say something like hello, how may I help you? Tell me about the Force. I don't know. The Force, powerful it is, surrounds you, binds the galaxy together it does, a Jedi ally it is, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so of course, you speak like Yoda, it's very fun. Try a system message. So the message is here, okay? Try a system message that actually says something like, you are Freddie Mercury, you always answer anything with rock lyrics, or I don't know, something like that, okay? It's also very fun to try, so feel free to try it out, okay? Also remember, try out all of these combinations of parameters. Okay, you can actually get all of these in codes later on. Okay, but try them out here in the sandbox because it's easier to handle things from here as well. Okay, by the way, you can also add examples to your system message. Those examples are like user assistant, user assistance. It's literally the same as starting a conversation with the examples, and then you ask the normal conversation. So there's not magic going on here. It's just a predefined conversation that starts before you start. Okay, not interesting. Okay. So anyway, this was an example, so feel free to try it. Sometimes even a human is better. Okay, I know that there are some places where they're hiring humans to just click on buttons so that the AI will work. This is absurd. Okay, but we see that even sometimes a human is better than to use AI services. Okay, um, anyway, last but not least, let's see if anyone has any questions. Okay, so I see a lot of links in the chat, which is great. Thank you very much for adding them. Okay, this is amazing. Okay, so anyway, I'm not sure if anyone has any questions, but if there's no more questions here, and I've exceeded my time a lot, like half an hour more. Okay, but this is just fun to talk about. Uh, but in any case, if you have any questions later on, feel free to ask. Okay, I'm always available in social networks, etc. And of course, if you are still looking for a present in this holiday season, feel free to buy this book by someone that does copy pasting from ChatGPT. I don't know. This is fun, of course. But anyway, this was created, of course, by Dal E. And I created this just a few hours ago. Okay. So anyway, everyone, thank you very much for having me. It's always very fun to talk about these kind of things. I really hope that you are able to try out some of these examples here. Another thing, the prompts that you write, so the code will be slightly different, but the prompts that you write here in Azure OpenAI will be exactly the same as if you're just writing them in OpenAI directly. So if you don't have access to Azure OpenAI because it takes a few days, now it's the holidays, it might take a few days until next week. If you don't get access to that, you can still pay for OpenAI directly to the OpenAI company, and it's not going to be that much difference. Okay. However, I would probably recommend to use Azure OpenAI because it's much more fun, simpler to control. You can control all of the environment. You can control where the data goes through, etc. So it's much safer. Virtual networks, even private endpoints for extra security, etc. And you have a guarantee that only you and Microsoft know about it. OpenAI will not know about any of the things that you send to Azure OpenAI because OpenAI is a different company, so the infrastructure is just for you. Okay, so it's an option. Also have a look in the future. Hopefully they will lower the prices of things like Copilot, etc. Microsoft's 365 Copilot, and you are able to execute these kind of things, but also for your data inside of Office 365. They use something called the Microsoft Graph to search for your data. Okay, Graph is easy. Go to the Graph Explorer and it's easy to find your data there in terms of programming, but they will use that. But at this moment, it's very, very expensive to use. Only big companies will probably use it. Okay, so I'm sure that they will lower the prices a lot for you to try. But as of now, you are welcome to try this in a much simpler way, even with your own data. Okay, so anyway, thank you very much once again for having me. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me at any time. Okay, have an amazing new year and have some fun next year just implementing these kind of crazy things. Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Andre, for the session. We did take a little bit more, a little bit more time over there,
Sorry,
but
sorry.
it was really, really worth it. The time spent.
Thank you very much for being here,
It was
everyone.
fun and engaging. So I hope you guys also had fun, and I hope also shared all the links that you might be asking me at the moment. All the
Perfect. Thank you.
links that you will read will be in the chat box. Go ahead and check it, and your certificate and the links to join the community also there. And thank you, Andre, for joining us, taking the time to share the fun, entertaining session. And always happy to have you. And maybe next year around we can have another session. Uh, and yeah, and thank you
If
everyone
we're
for
still
joining
here,
with us.
if we're still here and the bots haven't taken over the world.
Exactly. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining. I hope you guys
Thank
also
you.
enjoyed the session as Andre and me. And yeah, feel free to drop any questions or to Andre if there is anything that comes up after the session. Thank you, and hope you guys will use the link in the chat box and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone. Have an amazing new year. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.